Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Bahasham, Barakahak Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Raya coming at you with another lesson, and I'm going to start it off with an article on the express.com titled Civil War Panic as National Guard Floods LA and Martial Law Fears Loom. 3 days of protests in downtown Los Angeles and the deployment of National Guard has sparked Civil War fears. And hey, I just uploaded a video titled Guillotine Season is Coming. And, it was going into a civil unrest, the United States of America, which will take place because it's all a part of biblical prophecy. And now, you've been having this situation in Los Angeles over the last couple of days, and, it's intensifying. The National Guard has been called, and, a bunch of people are speculating if martial law is going to be declared. And, regardless how this situation pans out, just know this is just another stepping stone towards full-blown civil war in the United States of America. This is 2 Esdras chapter 15. I'm going to start at verse 15. For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another. And that one people standing up and fighting against another can go into race wars. It can go into class warfare, political warfare, citizens versus non-citizens, etc., etc. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. And that modern day sword, especially in the United States of America, is the gun. And, over in Los Angeles right now, we're seeing, one people standing up and fighting against another. Rubber bullets are being used, tear gas, bricks, you name it. Verse 16, for there shall be sedition among men. And sedition means conduct or speech inciting open rebellion against a ruling authority or monarch. And the whole reason for those protests is what? People protesting Trump's use of ICE to do those raids, to gather up, so-called illegals, mainly, so-called Latinos of the northern kingdom of the 12 tribes of Israel, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and your modern day kings and princes are those in the government, as well as the authorities that uphold the system, like the police, which, they're getting disregarded during those protests. And now you got the National Guard getting deployed, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. Everybody getting it how they live out there. But back to the article. Tear gas was fired at protesters in Los Angeles on Sunday when some demonstrators moved close to National Guard troops and shouted insults at them, hours after President Donald Trump's extraordinary deployment of the military over the objections of the governor and the mayor. Fighting within the government itself. The confrontation broke out as hundreds of people protested in front of the Metropolitan Detention Center in downtown Los Angeles, where several of the newly arrived National Guard troops stood shoulder to shoulder behind plastic riot shields. Video showed uniformed officers shooting off the smoke-filled canisters as they advanced into the street, forcing protesters to retreat. It was not immediately clear what prompted the use of chemical irritants or which law enforcement agency fired them. Minutes later, loud popping sounds erupted again as some protesters chanted, "Go home" and "Shame." One person was taken to the ground by uniformed officers. Another appeared to be bleeding from their head. Around 300 National Guard troops arrived in Los Angeles early Sunday on orders from Trump, who accused Governor Gavin Newsom and other Democrats of failing to stanch recent protests targeting immigration agents. They shall not regard their kings nor princes. But listen to this next paragraph. Writing on X, one user said, sadly, LA looks like a scene from the 2024 Civil War movie, which, if you haven't seen that movie by now, I don't know what you're doing. And you better go check out that movie immediately, as well as Bushwick, because these are the times we are quickly coming into. While another user asked, is the U.S. now in de facto civil war, or is that not yet what they call it? Others said they fear LA is the beginning of a wider civil war across the U.S., and Abaratazah, that's the case. But regardless how this situation plays out, just know civil unrest is coming from east to west, north to south in the United States of America. This is Isaiah chapter 19. I'm going to read verse 2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians. And this is talking about the modern day spiritual Egyptians as pursuant to Revelation 11, verse 8. These Americans, beginning with these American Edomites all the way down to, these other nations of who are Americans or modern day Egyptians. And we can clearly see they're going against each other. Northern Kingdom, Israelites who want to live that American dream, they're in an uproar. You got Edomites in an uproar and other nations over ICE over ICE raids. You got the Egyptians and the government with ICE going against the people, the National Guard deployed, etc., etc. And they shall fight, not talk. Everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor. City against city and kingdom against kingdom. Said city against city. And what did that last paragraph say? Others said they fear LA is the beginning of a wider civil war across the U.S. City against city, kingdom against kingdom. California Governor Gavin Newsom and Trump are publicly clashing about efforts taken to contain the protests, with Newsom even going as far as accusing Trump of manufacturing a crisis. This was echoed by Schiff, who wrote on social media, "There is nothing President Trump would like more than a violent confrontation with protesters to justify the unjustifiable, invocation of the Insurrection Act or some form of martial law." And hey, like that old saying goes, don't let a good crisis go to waste. Again, however this plays out, what's it going to lead to? More bills being passed, more surveillance, look up Palantir, more of a push for social media censorship, more troops and authorities on the street, etc., etc. And Trump is just the man to do it. I believe, during his selection campaign, he said he was the law and order president. Back in Isaiah chapter 19, verse 4, and the Egyptians, the Americans, will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord, Yahweh of hosts. And with the way things are looking, Donald Trump could very well be that fierce king and cruel Lord set over Egypt, the last president, so to speak. And, if that Insurrection Act, gets, enacted, hey, it's going to get nasty. The move appeared to be the first time in decades that a state's National Guard was activated without a request from its governor, a significant escalation against those who have sought to hinder the administration's mass deportation efforts. The deployment followed 2 days of protests that began Friday in downtown Los Angeles before spreading on Saturday to Paramount, a heavily so-called Latino city south of the city and neighboring Compton. Federal agents set up a staging area Saturday near a Home Depot in Paramount, demonstrators attempted to block Border Patrol vehicles, with some hurling rocks and chunks of cement. In response, agents in riot gear unleashed tear gas, flashbang explosives, and pepper balls. One people shall stand up and fight against another, Tensions were high after a series of sweeps by immigration authorities the previous day, as the week-long tally of immigrant arrests in the city climbed above 100. A prominent union leader was arrested while protesting and accused of impeding law enforcement. And, I've even heard, those with dual citizenship, getting rounded up. And then you had that one, I believe he was a Venezuelan Jake that got deported. And, he was a citizen, or at least had dual citizenship. Hey, Trump is definitely being a cruel lord right now over you Egyptians, especially you Israelites. In a directive Saturday, Trump invoked a legal provision allowing him to deploy federal service members when there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. There shall be sedition among men. He said he had authorized the deployment of 2,000 members of the National Guard. Let me see. I'll read this last paragraph and then we'll get to more information. Asked if he planned to send U.S. troops to Los Angeles, Trump replied, "We're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart like it was under Biden." He didn't elaborate. So now I'm going to just play a little bit of this clip from Large Man Abroad's YouTube channel titled "Emergency Breaking: Journalist Targeted by Law Enforcement for Covering LA ICE Raid Protests." So nobody's safe out there. This is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
Welcome back, everyone. This is one of the dangerous effects. When you go ahead and dehumanize the protesters, when you call protesters rioters, even though for the most part, every protest that happens across this country, 99% really of those protesters are peaceful protesters. It's always the 1% that it's focused on, whether it's a protest that's happening from the right, whether it's a protest that's happening from the left. This is just typical. We should all know this by now. Anytime there's a burning car, we're going to amplify that view. It's going to become symbolic of the moment. That is the photo, that is the footage that is going to be pushed all over the world. But like I said, the dangerous side of this is that you see all these protesters as combatants. And the effect of seeing all protesters as combatants is that even journalists that are there to do their job and record are also seen as combatants.
Moving in on horseback, firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA. Whoa! You just shut the fuck up! You okay? I'm good.
So any time that you see an
Get nasty out here. Now I'm going to go to this article on theguardian.com. We are witnessing the first stages of a Trump police state. The National Guard's deployment in Los Angeles sets the U.S. on a familiar authoritarian pathway. History shows the results. Now that Donald Trump's tariffs have been halted, his big beautiful bill has been stymied, and his multi-billionaire tech bro has turned on him, how does he demonstrate his power? On Friday morning, federal agents from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and the Drug Enforcement Administration conducted raids across Los Angeles, including at 2 Home Depots and a clothing wholesaler, in search of workers who they suspected of being undocumented immigrants. Though the figures vary, they reportedly arrested 121 people. They were met with protesters who chanted and threw eggs before being dispersed by police wearing riot gear, holding shields and using batons, guns that shoot pepper balls, rubber bullets, tear gas, and flashbang grenades. On Saturday, Trump escalated the confrontations, ordering at least 2,000 National Guard troops to be deployed in Los Angeles County to help quell the protests. He said any demonstrations that go in the way of immigration officials would be considered a form of rebellion. Stephen Miller, the The White House Deputy Chief of Staff called the protests an insurrection. Very serious words getting used. On Saturday evening, the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, threatening to deploy active duty Marines, saying the violent mob assaults on ICE and federal law enforcement are designed to prevent the removal of criminal illegal aliens from our soil, a dangerous invasion facilitated by criminal cartels, aka foreign terrorist organizations, and a huge national security risk. Under President Trump, violence and destruction against federal agents and federal facilities will not be tolerated. Trump and his regime are rapidly creating such an infrastructure in 5 steps. But history shows that once an authoritarian ruler establishes the infrastructure of a police state, that same infrastructure can be turned on anyone, and a cruel lord and fierce king shall be set over the Egyptians, declaring an emergency on the basis of a so-called rebellion, insurrection, or invasion. 2. Using that emergency to justify bringing in federal agents with a monopoly on the use of force, ICE, the FBI, DEA, and the National Guard against civilians inside the country. 3. Allowing those militarized agents to make dragnet abductions and warrantless arrests and detain people without due process, creating additional prison space and detention camps for those detained, and eventually, as the situation escalates, declaring martial law, which, hey, we know in the scriptures that, the saints, the Israelites, are going to be cast into, detention centers and prison camps and out of their houses. This is Revelation. Actually, this is 2nd Esdras 16. I'm going to start at verse 70. For there shall be in every place and in the next cities a great insurrection. Hey, remember what those in Trump's administration said, as well as Trump. This looks like a rebellion and an insurrection. For there shall be in every place and in the next cities a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. And in the first article I read, Trump said there are going to be troops everywhere in the United States of America to what? Help with ICE and deportation. So in a sense, you're seeing the beginning stages of that great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord, which are the Israelites, whether they know they're Israelites or not. As it says in Romans, my people have a zeal, but not according to knowledge. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, you're the main target of Esau Edom out here. They shall be like madmen, sparing none. Hey, right now, shooting pepper balls, tear gas, doing what they do. But when it gets down to it, those madmen are going to include what? Troops, foreign and domestic, mercenaries. You've been having a lot of those people coming across the border, but they're just focusing on the Northern Kingdom. A lot of those coming across the border are actually sleeper cells and troops that are going to get that call and be activated. And lest we forget, these drones and robots that the infrastructure is heavily being built up for. They shall be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord. For they shall waste and take away their goods and cast them out of their houses. Getting cast out of your houses and sent to detention camps, prisons, FEMA camps, you name it. And again, on we're seeing a beginning stage of this with what? The Northern Kingdom being cast out of their houses, being gathered up in those ICE raids to be deported. But out of the Israelites, the main target is going to be those that know they're Israelites. Esau wants to get the elect. Hey, the brothers that are out on the highways and byways prophesying, as well as putting up video epistles like this. And hey, you sincere Israelites that, comment on the videos, help out the ministry. Hey, if you've looked up an Israelite video, hey, you're on a data server somewhere. But this is Revelation chapter 2, verse 10. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil, that deceiver, Esau Edom, the so-called white man, shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried. They shall spoil and take away their goods, and cast them out of their houses. And ye shall have tribulation 10 days, which just means a complete amount of tribulation for whatever your lot is. Be thou faithful unto death, because some of us will be martyrs. And I saw those that were beheaded for not bowing down to the image of the beast or receiving his mark. And I will give thee a crown of life. To you sincere Akim and Akwat out there. However, Esau comes at you, and whatever your lot may be, just endure like a good soldier of Yahweh Bahashem Yahushua unto the end, and you will be of that elect number. But let's see if there's any more I want to get in here. That's pretty much it. Let me X some of these out. All right. Last bit of information is back on Large Man Abroad's YouTube channel. Martial law is coming. The end of our nation. Fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
With everything that's happening right now, the question has to be asked, is there a concerted effort being made to flood the cities that were formerly known as sanctuary cities with federal troops? Is martial law next? This is really the question we need to ask ourselves.
We're doing immigration actions all throughout the country. We're not saying we're going to favor one area over another. We're all over the country, in every neighborhood, in every city, and you're going to see an expansion of that. Like I just said, we're going to increase the teams greatly. So you're going to see more teams on the streets you've never seen before. You're going to see more worksite enforcement.
That great insurrection, and they shall be like madmen sparing none, spoiling and casting them out of their houses. Brothers always say, the northern kingdom gets it first, but the southern kingdom gets it the worst. You so-called Negroes, so-called Black American, African American of the southern kingdom. Just because, what's happening to the northern kingdom right now doesn't mean that Esau's going to swing that blade in your direction. We're all under the scopeo of this devil.
That you've ever seen in the history of this nation. You got sanctuary cities, or I said, we're going to flood the zone.
So the optics of the moment really do seem like there is an effort to increase enforcement specifically within these targeted zones. Like Mr. Homan just said, these sanctuary cities are going to be flooded with more agents than you've ever seen before. So the consequence of that is, yes, blue states, blue cities will be targeted more than red states and red cities, because it's the blue states and blue cities that had the sanctuary laws that protected migrants from deportation while allowing their legal process to actually take place. And what we're seeing all over the internet right now is ICE agents in plain clothes inside of courthouses waiting for migration cases to be finished. And even though continuances are being made, even though there's an appeal being made, they're still taking them, denying them the due process of actually having their continuation or their appeal, and moving to deport them.
If we can't arrest a bad guy in the jail, one agent arrests a bad guy in the jail in the safety and security of the jail, which is safer for the officer, safer for the alien, and safer for the community, okay, you're going to force him in the community to find him. If we can't find him in the community, we're going to find him at the work site. So we're going to flood the zone, and sanctuary cities will get exactly what they don't want. More agents in their neighborhoods, more worksite enforcement, because we're going to get the bad guy.
Like I said, we have to look at reality. And reality is you are going to flood Democrat cities, Democrat states, let's call it what it is, with troops, even though they don't want them to be there. And we're going to use the word troops because that's how they're being treated. They're being given the powers that go beyond normal law enforcement that people deal with without any kind of local oversight. This is the militarization of the enforcement branch to crack down on state sovereignty.
We'll end it on that note. This is 2 Esdras 13 and 31. And one shall undertake to fight against another, one city against another, one place against another, one people against another, and one realm against another. So it remains to be seen, how this situation is going to pan out. But regardless, we know according to prophecy, civil unrest is coming. It's about to be the ultimate Royal Rumble on the streets of the United States of America. So that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.